When I chair conferences, 99 times out of 100 I won't have, it'll be either a child protection plan for all the children or not. But having said that, I know that, yes, if you feel that a child, I don't know, a 15-and-a-half-year-old male, dare I do that? I don't know. Will he be able to protect, whereas you've got a baby within the house? Yeah, that's a reasonable thing. And then you would look at the fact, well, is the older child, one, as you quite rightly say, able to protect himself or herself, and the vulnerability of the baby would be a different issue. And I know we're focused on domestic abuse here, so I suppose if it were neglect, shall we say, basic needs, then you could argue possibly that the older child should have the self-care skills not to fall into that category. So I suppose, to answer your question, yeah, that is a possibility. Yeah.
And guys, I know that we're probably not doing this as justice, and we should have much longer. We've got 10 minutes. Okay, so yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Absolutely. No, that's fine. Okay, so what I've got some of the questions that I had to look at. Timescales. Yeah, the review conference, as I say, has to be within 3 months, and then we review the plan. If it's felt the child, then we do the same test. You know, we did earlier, is a child at continued risk of significant harm. Well, we do the same test again for that conference. If we feel it is still the same, then we will then obviously continue with the child protection plan. The timescales for the next review, 6 months. However, the chair can decide to bring that forward if you feel, she feels that's appropriate. And what is tending to be happening now? I tried 3 times, I didn't get it done. Okay, what we tend to do now is that if we feel that the progress isn't enough, so we come back and we've done a review and we're thinking, well, this feels exactly the same as it was at the initial. We can say, please go away, look at what we need to do, and we'll come back again in 3 months, rather than leaving it for the 6 months to let it drift. What we're trying to avoid is obviously drift, but also we're there to protect the children, and if things aren't changing, they're still in the same environment that they were before. So we need to be saying that. That's why we're looking at that. So that is happening. In terms of discontinuing a plan, yeah, a very brief example. You're travelling along, you fall into the child protection process, okay, so the family's in there. It goes without saying, to actually come out of that, you have to be here. Does that make sense? Because you have to demonstrate sustained change. And that's the important thing with these processes. There's no good in... We are reasonably proud in West Sussex that we don't have that many coming back to conference. It happens, but not that many compared perhaps to some local authorities. So we hope to try and get it right during the first process if we can. Okay. So the criteria for coming off the plan, and that's again on the back here, you can see that. The harm has been reduced by actions taken to a child protection plan, so that speaks for itself. And that's the whole point of the plan, isn't it? Let's get this family working together and let's keep these children safe. All the circumstances have changed. We talked about people moving away or they move to another local authority. That happens, and then obviously we have to do a transfer.
What about if there's an alleged perpetrator of abuse in this and he's gone to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a monitor when he comes out?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay. And I think this is an interesting one. I keep saying but I can remember when I came to West Sussex and I saw this. There were plans that said something like, should circumstances repeat themselves in the future, then a child protection plan, a child protection conference will reconvene. But there was no triggering mechanism for that. Let's talk about sexual abuse for a second. Just imagine that there's a perpetrator, alleged perpetrator in the family home. His offence occurred within another family, and it was with a 6-year-old child, and he's having a baby, a new partner, 1 child. The risks that were associated with the original concerns, one would argue, won't be there until this, I mean, it's simplistic, but won't be there until this child is 6, in theory. I mean, I'm being simplistic. So, but you think there should be a mechanism in place to highlight that, but there doesn't appear to be. So, in answer to your question, what we try and do within the conference process is to look at that, because, and the thing is, the predictors and always that sentencing can be very haphazard. And you know, we have one conference and we have police and probation saying, well, he's going to go away for at least 3 years, and then you find out he's on tag after a couple of weeks. And how do you manage that risk? So we always build into the process, if there are any changes, then we must immediately reconvene or at least have a full group. address it. It is flexible, this process. I think that's the important thing. You can come back in, yeah. You could, but it's a very valid point, yeah.
It has to be flexible, doesn't it?
Yes, well, it does, because these things do change so dramatically. They really do. Okay. The last point I wanted to talk about, I suppose, in terms of the process, is if we look right at the bottom of the back page, we talk about section 3110 of the Act. That's the Children Act 1989. Where the question of harm suffered by a child is significant, turns on the child's health and development. Their health and development should be compared with that which could be reasonably expected of a similar child. But what I'm saying is that what that really means is that you have two children of similar backgrounds, but the other one hasn't had the domestic abuse, the other one hasn't had the neglect. Are they in the same position, emotionally, physically? That's always a difficult one to prove in domestic abuse. So that's when we always have to go back to the research stuff. And we all know that research tells us that children will suffer. There's no question, it's there, but it's just interesting. If you took section 31 literally, you could say in confidence, well, I think it's your point that children might be presented with that issues at all. And in theory, you'd say, well, there's no significant harm, so therefore there shouldn't be a plan. But that's the exception, because you're going to go to research and say, no, with particularly domestic abuse, they will suffer, so therefore there needs to be a plan. Yeah. But it's an interesting one, because a purist would say, well, no, I mean, it's not happening. You know,
it's great that that's picked up on though. You know, it is great because there is a lot of good research out there.
Absolutely.
You know, and giving us the evidence that they do suffer.
Yeah. I mean, I always refer to, and I have done it with pre-births, where, and I really condemn the Italian scientists that did it, but actually did some research with pregnant women who were in domestically abusive relationships. Now, why on earth they didn't pull them out of this is another issue. However, they monitored the baby, and the babies were showing stress within that environment. As I say, I think the research was bad. I don't think they should have done it, but now we've got it, we can actually cite that. And I will do that in conference to pre-birth. We all know this, but it was just interesting because, you know, people don't think of that. But from my point of view, I suppose the way I see it is the chemical changes as well. You know, when you're anxious, you're stressed, you're in fear, you're pumping that through the baby. It's definite, you know. So again, and again, we enough research hasn't been done about the brain development, because we're really to start to do that, aren't we? We're talking about drug misuse and stuff, but I believe that because these chemical changes when the baby is in the womb, I think that will have an impact on brain development. That's just a, I mean, there is some research to show that, but it's still very new.
George Hoskins from the Wave Trust, we went to a conference once where he showed the difference.
That's right.
In the makeup. I think they were 18 months old, one that had lived with abuse since conception, one that hadn't. And it was unbelievable.
Absolutely. And you can see it, it's there, isn't it? The scan of the brain, wasn't it? The brain scan, you can see it. So, you know, if the machinery is broken, you've got a difficulty.
Can I ask something? I just wondered how you would most want someone like Worth Services or myself as a women's safety worker, how would you hope that we would contribute to a child protection conference? Would you rather...
You know what, this was the big one, because I was hoping to set more time aside for this bit, because I put
I think we've done you an injustice really, you've only given you 5 minutes.
No, it's okay. I was hoping to reverse that, because, okay, let me just, what's the role of a professional? Let's look at it from that perspective first. Generally, the role of a professional is separate from that of advocate. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the area we're talking about now, because I do know that your role is very supportive, and it's whether you're able, and again, this is sort of thinking outside the box a little bit, and I have no agenda, I assure you, it's not about that, but it's whether you feel as professionals you can sit there and say it as it is, and you have that arrangement with the person that you're working to, or indeed by saying it is, are you going to damage that relationship? Those are the issues.
We've had that discussion though, and the decision that's been made is that it would be the managers who would attend the child protection conferences because they don't have the relationship that the IFAs have. And then the IFA relationship with the client is maintained, and their manager, the IFA's manager, can go and put the view of the advocate and also talk about the protective measures that are in place or not, without damaging the relationship with Worth. That's the way that we're looking to go forward.
Does that answer that one then?
Yeah, and with my case, unfortunately I don't have the, I have to go and attend myself for the cases that I do, but that's a different issue. But something I often find is that the cases that I'm working with, when we're still in a relationship with the perpetrator, he's been known to commit domestic violence, that's why he's on probation in the first place, but she might have told me there's been a further incident that hasn't been reported, etc., etc. etc., I would obviously want to feed that into the conference.
Yeah.
But something that's very hard for me is that often things that I've said or tried to include have either been included in a child protection report, which I wouldn't want them to be because they could be shown to the perpetrator, or I've been asked to write a report to send to the conference, but then not being sure whether that's going to be read at the right time, whether it's going to be read in front of the perpetrator, and I don't always know how I can ensure that it goes across in the right way.
There's a mechanism for this, there really is. Okay, you can ask, first of all, if you can attend, in your, I know we talked about the way, but if you are attending, you can ask for a professional slot at the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, we have two sets of reports that go out from a conference. We have a professional's copy and a parent's copy. That was, the reason we did that, I mean, you might think that's great because we're going to, but sadly, because of the new electronic system, copies were being sent to the wrong places. So in order to monitor that, we wanted to see which copies were going wrong. Does that make sense? However, one benefit, and I'd like to claim it as a reason, but the benefit of that is that there are two separate documents now. So the one that you would feed into for professionals only would just be that document. It is that simple. And it would be stored separately on the system as well. In terms of, you have every right to ensure that your information, if you feel is going to put the client, the person at risk, but you feel it is a child protection issue, as long as you make it absolutely clear that that's the case, you can ask for that privacy.
So it's really a matter of me just making it absolutely
you have to be very clear,
highlighting
absolutely.
it. Because sometimes I think, oh, I've told someone, and then I obviously haven't made it clear.
No, and I think I don't want to talk barn door because the whole point of it is to avoid any problems, isn't it? That's the thing. However, perhaps you should be emailing so you've got some copy of something. Yeah. I mean, I know that's no good if it's gone wrong anyway, but at least there's a recourse for that, and you say, well, I clearly asked for. You know, anybody, I must be very, very clear, anybody can phone the chair up and they can say, look, these are my concerns today, or you've got a conference coming up next week I'm coming to. Talk to me about it. But that's fine. You know, that's what we're there for, really. So, and then we can be aware as well. Then, so yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I'm sorry, guys. I think we could have had at least another hour on this, and I just feel like we probably should have booked it in longer. But it's not until we calm and realise that actually it's opened up all these questions that we've got. Maybe there'll be a chance for David to come back at another team day.
Absolutely.
Really, but I'm sorry we haven't got the time to answer the questions that we wanted. But thank you very much. That's given us a really good overview of what the responsibility you've got. Certainly the other agencies are saying no, you hold that ultimate decision because it's based on risk. Huge responsibility. And I think, you know, as we move forward, certainly with child protection conferences, is moving away from that advocacy because we've also got to be there to highlight the risks as well, and if there aren't any safeguarding there, you know, if the parent isn't being protected, we've got to highlight that, because if we don't, you can't do your job.
Absolutely.
You know, so do you want to stay with us or do you have to go?
Am I okay to stay for a few
We're
minutes?
playing parcel.
I'll
I'll be an observer. Now,
David, I will say, probably go away, you might say to us, I was cut short of parcel. But Emma here spent the majority of last night doing parcel. To the point, texted me and said, whose idea was this? I don't think it was yours. And I just can't leave this room without doing parcel. Because she spent a long time on it.
You've got 21 layers.
21 layers, okay. Well, we can be quick.
I didn't get every one to have a layer, but
okay. And the music that I've got, because I don't know how to, I've got the first 6 songs,